그러와 간시 권대 최나 탐제지 균대나마 루완 메토시 미비 대소 간연 근시 봐 대니 상제 기회 남라슈 됐어
네
맞아 뭔가서
네 맞아 간식
남른체 남른체 남조체 간시 권대 최나 탐제지 세가라 코와코위 코원 주비린 배왕기 균대 참바직 코라 도비린 배왕도 제위 균대 참바니 균티체가 균대 참바니 원디 뒤위 아니 최남 간시 권대 최나 둔자군 균대 남의 루반 매통신 세가라 다 코원 주비린 배왕도 채나 마리발라 때네 니와 되지기 레사 텔라 때나 레지 파자 남셔지고 대네 안에 세난지세 따위가나 아니 풍부 주족이 근데디 예매도 좋다고 직체. 자,
So there's a verse in the three principal aspects of the path, which says that one who sees the entire way in which samsara and nirvana operate causally, that is that that the samsara operates by means of cause and effect, and likewise the transcendence of samsara equally operates or occurs by a process of causality, cause and effect. 간식코대
최남 탐지기 균대 남의 루와 매통신
루와 매통신
균대 루와 매바세가나 주마리 발라테는 대우 레사바다 레디 바자 괴외 아니 춤제 펜 판대도 춤제 진짜 주바디 루와 매바.
So someone who sees that the causality, the relationship between cause and effect is undeceptive, sees it in an undeceiving fashion, and causality applying to all of the phenomena that are included within samsara and nirvana. So here, this first two lines then expresses that both samsara and nirvana, or the transcendence of samsara, both operate causally. So in the case of samsara, as already mentioned then, we can see the causality there because when one is in a state of ignorance, one engages in activities that are motivated by that ignorance. That activity itself is karma, action, which places imprints upon our stream of consciousness, and then those ripen when those principal causes there serve as source for the subsequent arising of experience in the future, when the cooperative conditions that activate the imprints upon our consciousness are germinated, then those imprints give rise to all of the different forms of suffering. So therefore one has to see in an undeceived way the way in which that causality, the relationship between the basic causes of samsara and their specific effects, that there's no deception, it's undeceptive in operating in a causal relationship. Likewise, the same thing applies to the path or the transcendence of samsara, the achievement of nirvana. That is, when one eliminates through the practice of the path, when one eliminates completely ignorance, that is, when one stops the activity of ignorance, then ignorance is no longer functioning. It ceases to give rise to activities motivated by ignorance, and therefore those activities or that karma ceases, and then the results, no more imprints are placed upon the consciousness to give rise to subsequent forms of experience. And likewise, without ignorance being present, then the cooperative causes that cause the imprints within or potentials within the consciousness to be germinated don't function. And then eventually the process of samsara is stopped. And that stoppage of samsara is itself nirvana, or the transcendence of samsara.
Oh yeah. Kwa dobi junde chusong. Kwa dobi rinpa junde.
Koi to parenpa.
Kwa la dobi junde. Yande. Da tenra vi jubi rinpe wangdo chevi junde chanpa chikdang. Kwa la dobi rinpe wangdo junde chanpa nyiwa de. Tenra vi ani dobi rinpe wangdo ani ju tela tene. Mariba doba chevi nyembo. Ani donyi dobe lo tela tene. Mariba doba chuwaki. Ani junde chanpa chikdang. Mariba tene lesa waki junde chanpa nyiwa de. Ani nyendu meba. Jotuba chikche. Junde namya luwa me tongshin. Miluwa. Yu dewu jimbala miluwa. Ote yinzang luwa meba tongshin. Mibi deso kanyin kun shiba seye kanta. Tendegi yule dewu chungan tegi junzen la tene. Ani orangshinji chuwa zibi ani chuwa zimbi zimba tegi ani deso de zinangi yude ani shikba de kaba ki ani tomba ngosumdu tobi ishe yom tomba tobi ishe de nyena ani jawa jibe lamla shubare.
So then, so again, with respect to that process by which one turns away samsara, stops the operation of samsara, then the principal instrument here is, as said, the wisdom or gnosis, which realizes wisdom, which realizes or understands, or the gnosis, which realizes emptiness, and that understanding of emptiness is then the direct antidote to ignorance, which misconceives things as being established or existing by means of their own intrinsic nature. So the object which is misconceived by object which is misconceived by ignorance is something existing by means of its own intrinsic nature. And this wisdom is the direct antidote, opposite to that. And therefore, by having that, developing that wisdom, one eliminates the misconception that things exist as if they were established by means of their own intrinsic nature. That then, as said, stops the operation. Ignorance ceases. One ceases to engage in activities motivated by ignorance, and then the effects of those activities stop as well. So in both the case, when we talk about samsara, samsara arises from its specific causes. Samsara as effects arise from the causes, the samsaric causes that give rise to those effects. Likewise, in the case of the transcendence of samsara, or the stoppage of samsara, in the case of the path, one develops the agent which stops the operation. So there's a causal relationship there. That agent functions as a cause or condition for the stoppage of the ignorance, and therefore there's a causal relationship there as well. So the fact that these two sets, the samsaric set of samsaric experience and the causes that give rise to samsaric experience, and the fact that in the case of the path, the wisdom understanding emptiness operates as the condition for the stoppage of samsara. Both of those sets are causally related. Therefore, that causal relationship within the sets and between the sets demonstrates that things don't possess even an atom of intrinsic existence, that there's no intrinsic existence within either samsara or nirvana. So then the end of the verse says that when one sees that in an undeceptive way, sees it without any deception, the relationship between within samsara and the relationship within the path and the relationships between the two sets, then one destroys completely the focal points of mikpeteso
mikpa denzingi mikpa kare sana da miu kan deso sede kan sana ki tendang yu kan rashi ji tuwa zimba ki ane zi se ki tendang yu rashi ji tuwa ti kapa de rashi ji tuwa shiba de kapa ki ane doni dobi yishe di ranju le kena ane jawa jibe lang le shibare.
So then this focal point then where it says when destroys, annihilates all focal point. The focal points here are things being established as if they were real, things existing as if they the fictional way conceived object of this misapprehension of things which misapprehends them as existing as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature. So by completely annihilating the focal point, that is, any kind of the sort of appearance even of the conceived object of this ignorance, then one has entered into the path which pleases the victors, victorious Buddhas.
So go like to be one, Casa Yagi, Sundro Kunji, Imbuti, Jassa Tambanamji, Nabila, Kanda Tandanamji, Jungote, Situa, or Yagi, and so on as it. Or that 10 Nashi Chane, and it had on Kondarajin, Luza Mebata, Judet and the Lua Mebani, Pending Garment, Rosu Chawai, Lulu Gondon Dova, Chinji Loop, said that you Baleon Quarry. Kondarajin, Luza Mebatang, Taji Shuare Kala. 아니 가서래 콘데에 가나 코안주비를 배wan도 제와기 군대 참바태당 노비를 배wan도 제비 군대 참바니 어디 라신지 주가 도장 매바탕 야 콘다라지 라신지 주가 요 말에데 마좀나야 주머리 발에 때네 저 편지를 내서바기 아니 레사 레디 저거를 거발라 때네 남이지 저거 지해지 예매도 좋다다 그 말이 반도 발라 때네 레사바 도바 코도 비림바 예매도 좋다 컨데라친 두잔 매바다 군대는 컨데라친 두잔 매바다 군대 가세요 컨데라친 두잔 매바다 그렇다 좀 와서 원하는 군대나가 누가 몇 돈씩 말이다. 권자라시 매바 돈 받아. 나머지 좀 봐서 권자라시 장 받아. 권자라시 두자매 받아. 어디에 다 간시에 권자라시 두자매 받아. 지나치나 주만 말라 당연 선한 다수 치신도 나야 대반 매배 추되네. 규미딘지 저와 체질로 권자남상 권자라 군대나 누가 매 받아. 누르 관도 또와 치질로 다 찍지 좀 와서 다 대주발이래요. 지들아 군대는 주자면 전대나마 누가 몇 번이 펜션 가면 줘서 차와 달랬습니다. 펜션 가면 줘서 차와 이시 유래 때는 대우 중화 대당 유래 때는 대우 중화 아니 코와 중도 그 주텔라 때는 도바당 주비 대우 중화 대당 아니 라신지 마주바니 오데 아니 가와 매바 직조스 직송와 때는 주비 준전지 아니 코와는 줄래 때는 대우 중화 대타바 줄래 때는 대우 중화 인장 라완도 마주바 동바랑 야와 템바 펜지 직조스 직송하기 아니 가서래요. 파발루루기 안에 때라 지장배 덴디 뒤선고 건데 파발루루지 때라 파바기 안에 건데 안에 사모동반이 또 와시 영화 쇼세나리 권다라신 두자매보다 균전변대 루바매바니 펜준감에 초수 차라이 루루건데 또바 친지로 세대 대지벌량 거대 아
덴더 통보
권다라신 두자매보다 균전 나면 루바매도 균전 덴디 루바매바니 펜준감에 초수 차라이 루루건데 또바 친지로
So then there's further verses which say that, another verse which says, please bless me to be able to understand the meaning of, or the thought of Arya Nagarjuna. And this verse, the intent of it is that, so the samsara and so that samsara and nirvana do not possess even an atom of intrinsic existence or intrinsic nature. And yet, things exist dependent origination. Things arise independently, and seeing that those two are not contradictory, that there's no contradiction between the two, and that instead of being contradictory, they actually support each other, they accompany each other. That's the intention or thought of the Arya master Nagarjuna, and the verse then it concludes saying, please bless me to be able to understand that. So this has the same intention, basic intention of what was expressed in the other verse, in that here samsara and nirvana are, although they're completely devoid of intrinsic nature, all of the phenomena that are found within samsara, that is, whether we're speaking of the causes that give rise to samsara or the effects which are the samsaric experience, or if we're talking about the path as the cessation of suffering, transcendence of samsara, which is freedom from samsara, and as well as the path, which gives rise to that, the path here being principally the gnosis, which realizes emptiness, the direct antidote to the misconception of things. And so each within all of these, there's not even a single atom or a particle of intrinsic nature. So even though they're devoid of any kind of intrinsic nature, nevertheless they exist and arise in causal relationships. That is, in the case of samsara, let's say we create causes, we engage in actions which function as causes for subsequent experience. And then in the case of the path, when one generates this gnosis that realizes emptiness, it serves as the agent which affects one's liberation. So even though none of these possess even an atom of intrinsic nature, they exist in these causal relationships. So they're simultaneously being empty of intrinsic nature and existing in causal relationships, which are the character of dependent origination. The dependent origination then explains how and supports dependent origination and emptiness support each other in that understanding one induces an understanding of the other, and vice versa. So these two being related in that way, and especially the dependent origination between emptiness and dependent origination, is the sort of key or special thought of Arya Nagarjuna. And that's, the verse says, please bless me to be able to understand that.
Oh, yeah, that tender. Any Casore Rashi Jitomba. Any that Della Beba Della. Any Kasan Shuanashi and a Kajang Neta, Chawang Neta. Any Dimbi Chita to Neta, Tuta to Sericala, Nishi Sani. Unita Tambo Kajang Wesi. Teni or Tijela. Any Yena Chita to Macarula, Madeva Eva Yinzang. Any Demba Yena Yang, any Dimbi Chita to Macarula, Madeva Ki. What the Demba Yena Dimbi Chita to Macarula, Madeva Chavati, or Chavang even net Mahache. That he Jella Dimbi Chitang even net says Zanga Jashapi to Shuatazina. Oh, Dimbi Chitang even net said, any tap data Pumbo knew what day. Any Rashi to be cheap to Meba. Said what data Pumbo knew the Rashi to be cheap to me. So, Demba Rashi to be cheap to Yena, Chigina. Anita Karagores and a Rashi to be Chigina, Anita that damage Chig. Chatham Jene Chigimba. Chatham Jene Chigimba. Chatham Jene Chigimba, you go in Zang. Anita. Dian Tambo Dondi Gala, and the Kasan Karawa, Datu Kalamba Temeres. Ra, Datu Kalamba, Kalamba, Rashi to be Gina, and the Niji Tambo the Datu Kalamba Temeres. Temeva Karesana, and the Rashi to be Gina, and the Chatham Genechi in Gores. Chatham Genechi in a Dada Pumbonga with the Chatham Genechi in Gore. Chatham Genechi in a Pumbonga with the Achigo in Gore. Any Pumbonga what they are Gigore, any iron Gingores. Pumbonga what they are Ging, iron Gina, and Namshi Pumbodang. Any Daniel what the Gingores. Namshi Pumbodan Daniel what the Gin, yeah.
So then we've gone over previously briefly the way of establishing that the I and the self an I and the mind are without any intrinsic nature. And the way in which one does that is through the four crucial points, as mentioned yesterday when we went over this, such that, first of all, one has to identify what the object of negation here, that is, the appearance of something as being real, being real when it doesn't actually exist that way. That sense of realness, which is actually non-existent, is the object of negation here. Or one could say that the sense of autonomy that we superimpose upon the I or the self is another way of saying this, or identifying and gaining a firm ascertainment of the object of negation. Then the second point, again, to review this, is that the essential point of having an ascertainment of the pervasion, or pervasion here you could also translate as entailment. That is, that if the thing was real, it would entail that it either be really or absolutely single or multiple. One of those two alternatives would have to obtain. So that's the second point there. That so if in the case of the self and the aggregates, which are the basis of the designation of a self or an I, then the self and the aggregates would, if the self was or I was real, then it would have to be, if it was established as real in the way that it appears to the misconception that grasps it as being real, then it would have to be either completely, in all respects, identical with the aggregates, or it would have to be completely, in all respects, completely, absolutely different from the aggregates, which are its basis of designation. It being real would entail necessarily that it's either absolutely identical with the aggregates or absolutely separate from or different, other than the aggregates. If that was the case, then that once you've established that entailment or pervasion, then one proceeds to the third essential point, which is negating the idea that, or negating the supposed idea that the self and the aggregates are identical in a way which is established by means of their own intrinsic nature. And the way that's done is by showing the unacceptable consequences that would occur if one held this, if that was the case. If it was the case that the self and the aggregates were identical, then one would say that, for example, the self and consciousness would have to, the I and consciousness would have to be absolutely identical in all respects. And from that, all kinds of, or any of the other aggregates, or the combination of the aggregates, the collection of them would have to be, the I or self would have to be absolutely identical with that collection, the basis of designating an I or a self. And that would entail all kinds of problems. For example, since the self or I is one, is single, then if it was absolutely identical with the aggregates, then the aggregates would be one, would simply be a single thing, because they're the same thing. If, on the other hand, if since the aggregates are plural, there's a multiplicity of them, there's 5 of them, then if the self was absolutely identical with them, then it would have to be itself be plural, have to be a multiple, a composite or a multiple sort of thing. And that also is unacceptable to someone who holds that the self is real, is absolutely established.
Oh yeah, that 풍부가 찍이나 풍부가야 찍도 아니 다다 풍부야 아니 다들 때문에 찍도 주고 그래. 풍부가 찍도 주나 아니 수지 풍부당 남시 풍부니고야 찍도 주고 그래. 수지 풍부당 남시 풍부니 찍도 주디 가나 아니 가서래 수라 카도당 입당 수라 카도당 입라서가 여바 티신도 아니 남시지 풍부들라양 입당 카도라서가 여바 주와다 타와 여바 타위 견당 아니 가서래 가산시와 나시 제니 류메스바 티신도 아니 남시 풍부르지 수지 풍부 메스바 티티서 남시지 풍부당 아니 메스바 타와 그견 오 대라 때네 아니 남 류당 풍부니 오지바 가서 지바라 내치통 내치통만 라때나 류당 남시니 오디 아니 오지바지 용 미세바 인베 아니 다당 아니 풍부니 오다 오지도 매바라 아니 영화 마테네 오 다 대양영화 마제나 아니 르바니 와텔라 아니 가대 풍부다나 대제지 마다자 다자 뭐 주루 세가나 아니야 다 풍부다 대영화 마 영화 간 만되나 아니 다다 풍부니 지여바이나 아니 풍부가 여바신도 당가 여과와게 아니 르바도 마다
Die Zugschipana.
풍부가 지리나 아니 수지 풍부다 나시 풍부니야 지고 그랬어. 자, 다시 수지 풍부다 나시 풍부니와 지바이나 아니 지기나 아니 수라 카도다 유여바 대신도 나시 풍부라야 카도다 이거고 그랬어. 와 남시 와 아니 수지 풍부 메스바 대신도 나시 풍부야 메스바 지고 그랬어. 메스바 류메스 뒤담바 시비스 류메스 그러와
So then another way of discussing this problem or unacceptable entailment that would obtain if one held that the I or the self and the aggregates were intrinsically identical, or were identical in a way that was established by means of intrinsic nature, is that if that was the case, then the I if the I was identical with the self was identical with the aggregates, well, within the aggregates, then we observe the body, and the physical aggregate or the physical form is the body, and that sort of aggregate of phenomena which make up the body has certain characteristics, such as since it's physical, like a visible form or something. Such physical things like a visible form has color and shape. And if the I was identical with the body, that aggregate, then the I also would have color and shape, and that's obviously not the case. And similarly, even within the aggregates, the I, if the I was identical with say the body, the physical aggregate, and consciousness, then other kinds of problems would obtain, because, for example, when the body is cremated, it would be the case that one's consciousness would be cremated as well, because if the I is intrinsically identical with the aggregates, body and consciousness, comprising the aggregates, then on the cremation of the body, when somebody dies, it would necessarily entail that likewise the consciousness would be incinerated at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's one. 입단 카도 여바 나시 전에 남시들라 입단 카도 여바 타베죠.
Well, then one would say that I think I'm not sure if I translated this correctly. That one I'm not sure if I translated this correctly. That if it was the case that the I was identical with the body and consciousness, the two primary portions or sort of ways of subdividing the aggregates, then it would be the case that just as the body has color and shape, likewise consciousness would have to have color and shape as well.
안에 다다 풍부네 다시 나신 타대때문에 지지도 주고 예매 오예매 지도 주고 오예매 지지도 주고나 안에 풍부 아여바 대시도 당아여 야나 다 태양 안에 풍부 아주와 그러마 어때 제가나 지도 주나 가사지라 풍부 투마 여바 지도 다에 망보 여바 주와 야나 다 지레 매바 나시 아 풍부야 투마 매바 주와 지레 매바 주와. And
then there's a similar additional kind of reasoning here, which is that if the self was identical with the aggregates, then reviewing here, the two unacceptable consequences would obtain, being that on the one hand, since the self is singular, if it was identical with the aggregates in this intrinsic fashion, had the same intrinsic character, had the same character as the aggregates intrinsically, then the aggregates as well would be a single thing. There wouldn't be any distinction among them. They wouldn't be plural, multiple compositive things. And then, or alternatively, since one would have to say that since the aggregates are multiple, then therefore the self also would have to be multiple, a plural sort of thing.
내가 많이 봤잖아. 안에 다 제주전도 좋아. 세대. 안에 풍부 제주 쳐봐 진도 안에 다 제주 쳐봐. 다 제주 쳐봐. 대 타녀도 다 제주 쳐봐라. 안에 꽤 매장 란전지 주위 다 제주 쳐봐라. 안에 꽤 여봐. 란전지 주위 다 같이 이 어때? 안에 제주 치료가나 랑전의 주변에 당 엄마당 치만이 오대 아니 재미 텐션 봐. 와 재미 텐션 랑전의 주변 아니 타달라 재미 텐션 연구를 재미 텐션 인바 인상 아니 해진기 교황 아마 추진기 미련 받테 나신도 아니 교황 아마기 아니 저기 교황 치마티기 교황 아마 미련 봐. 미련 봐. 어디
So then that's the third point there. If the self and the aggregates were completely identical, that is, intrinsically identical, identical in a way which precludes any difference between them, then those sorts of unacceptable consequences would obtain, and then we take that same process of reasoning and can apply it equally to the notion that the self and the aggregates are different in a way which is established by means of their intrinsic nature. That is, that they have, if they had a character, if the self had a character which was intrinsically different from the aggregates, then they would be unrelated things which could not depend upon each other, and in particular, the self could not depend upon the aggregates. So self and aggregates would become totally unrelated things that have no sort of relationship of dependence between them. This sort of the problem that would obtain there, or a couple of problems that would obtain there, is again reviewing sort of an overview of what we went over yesterday. Is that on the one hand, if they were completely 홍보 기직 제바
지금 다 기직 제바 이나양 랑자지 주위 기직 제바라 그러와 아니 랑자지 주위 기직 제바 이나 아니 당아마다 치만이 오데 랑자지 주위 기직 제바 이나 아니 치마대당 아니 가소래 아마니 오데 재미 대신이고 그래 재미 텐션 인디가나 아마 당아마게 제비 아니 자와데 교황아마데 교와 치면 그 미련바 해진기 교황아마 추진기 미련바데 가르래서나 해진의 추진이 어디 규타데 재미 텐션이데 디르바 네 인자다 같이 다니오테 양기 교황아마당 아니 체디 다니오데 아니 랑자지 주비 소소와 이나 아니 교황아마
So another way to discuss what we went over yesterday is thinking about the self and the aggregates as intrinsically different, different in a way which is established by means of its intrinsic nature or character. Or one could say having an identity, an intrinsically different identity, a different type of identity, an identity which is intrinsically different from each other, the self and the aggregates, then different kinds of problems would obtain, because we observe that the aggregates of a person in the past have arisen and disintegrated. That is, we can see clearly that in the past the aggregates of the person arise and disintegrate. And if that being the case, the person or self could not have a relationship with their aggregates in the past, such that they'd be able to remember events that occurred in their previous life, or previous lives, previous in this life, or previous in a previous life. Because the self of the present would be something, since the self of the aggregates of the past are intrinsically different than the self in the present. This self in the present would have no relationship with those aggregates in the past, which have risen and disintegrated. Therefore, one wouldn't be able to recall events that had occurred in the past, just as contemporary persons, two different persons who are contemporary with each other, they don't remember the events that they don't have a sort of personal recollection of events that occurred within the continuum of the other person. That is, the other person did something in the past. They have a memory of that, personal memory of that. You, as a separate person, cannot have that kind of personal memory of the event that occurred for that person in the past.
Oh yeah, that taking our margina, Tijela, and the Lashawa Chisawa. City, I cosm, City, and Gavella Shawata. And the Mikavi Lashawati, lady, and a lady Chisawata. Lady Namiji Trebu, Noya Yoamaris. Namiji Trebu, Noya Medil, Namiji Trebuti, and it Casore, Casachimala, Machimaki Yongore, Machimada. 아니래 som가게 아니오데 란자지티비 아니 타다레 란자지티비 타다라 데메 텐션 용고레 데메 텐션이나 아니 텔레데 취사와 두고레.
Then an additional fault that would obtain here, that fault is one, the inability to recall events in the past would occur because the persons in those two time periods would be different, absolutely different, in a way which is because their identity current identity is intrinsic to their present condition, whereas their past identity was intrinsic, absolutely determined for the past, and those two are unrelated, would be unrelated things if they had that kind of intrinsic identity, which was absolutely different. Then another problem that would arise is that one wouldn't experience the effects of the actions that one performs. That is, right now, you're as a person in the present, if your identity was such that it was intrinsic to you in the present, then it would be impossible for you in the future to experience the effects of the actions that you're performing now. These basically these I in the present and I in the future, because those identities are intrinsically distinct. Unrelated, therefore actions that you perform in the present could not give any kind of result in the future, and therefore the effects karma would be the effects of karma would not occur. The karma would be wasted, as it were.
Oh, that is jela. Ani le macha wata chaba. City, ani dedu nyawa bi khasa tegi. Ani dedu nyawa ke dedu ki jude, ani saranga ma ke khasa te chewa yinjang. Andi rang macha wata saranga ma ke khasa tegi chewa rang la dedu me yongade. Ani kharo sone le macha wata chede rang macha jang, ani dedu nyawa yinjang. Oh, saranga ma ke chewa rang chewa me jo te saranga ma te rani te me te shen yinjang. 인자 다 렘마제바다 태비냐와 렘마제바다 그 개두기 렘 데디기랑 렘마제양 체들라 데두냐와.
So then, likewise, this another problem sort of entailed by this would be that one couldn't experience So then an additional problem that would, or a consequence that would entail or obtain from this is that one would experience the results of actions that oneself had not performed. That is, one would have to endure the effects of actions that oneself had not performed, because the person in the past who created the action would be it would be such that it's distinct, it's different in a sort of intrinsic way. It's intrinsically distinct from the person, you as a person in the present, so that action that the person in the past created could not have any, I mistranslated that last bit. So you would have to encounter and endure the effects of actions that you yourself did not perform.
Oh yeah, that tendegi that riba tela tene ane dadang dagbuni wo de rangxin ji zhui ji na ji yong go re ji na nyawa te da yin ba da bu rangxin ji zhui ji ma yin ba la ane ngawa te当我起来讲呢，这个进来讲呢，吃饱也买了。可是我起来讲呢，下班的话，他这样我就买了吧，他可能讲的下来吧。我进来买着，讲呢，吃饱也买的。他这样我就买了吧，不得进来讲的下来吧。哦，他提醒都大当碰碰你我的，他安那我他的人呐，他跟他在有关了捐的了，得看着罗先生，你等着得送完了先生，看着碰碰那了，先碰碰在你面吧，就是这些个，是吧？得了得送完得了先生，碰碰了让，你我这边他在约呢，你碰碰对象是全把给，是吧？你碰碰对象是被经济的没点把过来，让心一这边了，经济的没点把过来，别呢。爬上来到全县都出边，你到了爬上个参与的没得么那些人，是，我特许可上讲一把，按特许去谈。
So when I explained this yesterday, I did it by discussing these two, the self and the aggregates, as if in terms of having an identical character with each other, or a different character from each other. And here today I'm talking about them as simply as being identical and being different. But it comes down to the same thing. There's no real difference in the entailments, the various faults that would entail of viewing them in these two different ways. It comes down to the same thing. Then if you think that, well, what's the problem in holding that the self and the aggregates are different in a way which is established by means of its own intrinsic nature, then the reply to that is, if the aggregates, and this is on 315 of the Tibetan, if the aggregates were other than, if the self was other than the aggregates, it would not have the characteristics or identity of the aggregates. This fault would obtain. And then regarding that, the explanation of this is that if the self existed such that it was different in a way that was established by means of its own nature, apart from the aggregates, then just as the self would not possess the identity or characteristic that characteristics or identity that defines something as being created, the identity that defines a thing as something which is created. So the aggregates are defined as as things that are created. That's their sort of identity is, and here the arising, existing, And disintegrating momentarily is the defining characteristic or the definition, let's say, of something which is created. And so if it was the case that the self was intrinsically different than the aggregates, then the self would not have that kind of characteristics, that kind of characteristic of being created and being something that arises, abides, and disintegrates moment to moment.
Oh yeah, that one. 대라 전 가르쳐서나 근데서 라잖아 다다 폼보니 오데 라시 유튜브 현이나 타대이나 아니 다 라시 유튜브 타대이나 제메 퇴신 연구래서 저와며 편집 저와며 퇴신 연구래서 때나 가와다 폼바다고 딘도 아니 오 타대비 가와다 폼바니 예서나 디나네 아니 가와다고 아니 술을 나나 아니 딘도 아니 폼바 집어 가와때 뭐 치나 딘도 폼바 집어 내지 가와요 말아봐 대나신 전에다 다다 폼보 이오데 라신 유튜브 현이나 폼보 레레 사위 텐도 아니 아지 요구 그랬어 폼보 레레 수사 사위 친 사위 아니 사위도 아주 요구 그랬어. 풍부레레레 사위치도 아자와네 말해. 요 말아. 풍부레레레 사디가나 주 다지 거분이 여이나 가와 추 란데 라나 딘도 안에 풍바치보 하되고 와라.
지금
그지.
랑징기 젠
다분이 현이나스让咱就注意先人呢，我太太被先用过的是，是吧？所以呢，我太太被去搞我的碰把大步，顶多月年，俺你天天搞我大步出两百钱呢，让查上呢，俺你碰把几步那个的吧，碰把几步那个的吧，
碰把几步
啊，搞我出的让上呢，俺你顶多碰把几步拉上啊，拉上啊，过山，啊呀，这样没个么的。
No, 가보니
가보니 요이나 어떻게 가보니 요라와 권인이 이 요이나는 내내 분바데 수랑 샤샤나 아니 된도 가와 집어라서 그래서 좋아 하고서
I thought I understood the words, but I don't get the meaning. Yeah, I think that, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
란센지 주용어 란센지 주비 시에나 오타자 요구레스 오타자 인나인자 다시 분발 주량비든도 가와수 주드나와 나시 전에 풍부레레레 싸서나 안녕하지 내고레스 풍부레레레 싸서나 아지 내고레스 풍부레레 싸빈 싸나 아자와는 말이 다시 풍부면은 아셔서요 말이와 라 메인데 풍부면은 아니 아샤사면 받네 나이수 나이미 아니 가서래 나나와라 대시고라 나이미 나이 아니 수시와라 봐 어두시와다
풍부레레라
풍부레레레 사스나 내가 파 산사나 미시 유도 사나 사세디 미시 유도 사디 잠바 다 밖에 나치고 나서와 나치 보라고 봐. 왜냐면 나 풍부레레 사이트도 나 쇼트야 말했어. 됐시고다.
다리는
라시안 주비 제시이나. 다중 거분이보다 란자지 주비 타자 예배 가와수 사회오도 풍부내기도 왔어. 다 대나데 나다 풍부니보다 란자지 주비 사 아니 제이나 풍부를 사위 예수 안녕하지냐고 그래서 되네서요 말이지.
So here the problem would obtain that if the I or the self and the aggregates were intrinsically different, that is, when we say something is intrinsically different or different, or is different in a way which is established by the intrinsic nature or intrinsic identity of the thing, then two things which are different in that way must be completely unrelated, and unrelated in a way such that they can't have a relation of dependence, one thing depending upon the other. So if the self or the I and the aggregates were different in that way, intrinsically different, then it would be the case that, or the example that's given here is a pot and a pillar. Pot and a pillar are two different things, and if you have two of them in a single place, and you take one of them away, let's say you remove the pot, then the pillar is still there. Because they're different, but they're not dependent upon each other, such that if one is there, if one exists, the other one has to be present, having that kind of relationship. So similarly, with respect to the I or the person and the aggregates, if they were intrinsically different, it would be the case that we could eliminate individually each of the five aggregates. We could remove, say, the body, and then sensation, ideation, activities or consciousnesses, these different things. We could eliminate them individually, and yet, after we had done that, completely gotten rid of all the aggregates, the I or self would still have to remain.
Oh yeah, that tended. 타대기 리바 대다 대체 대다 찍다 타대기 리바라 때나 아니 다라심에 봤대 다라심에 봤대나 바비 리바데 아니 다기와 아니 다기와라야 아니 추자리 가나 아니 다기와라심에 봤대나 밤니 다 다다다기와라심에 봤대나 바바 다 가서도 마도 주체 대제세세 다더니 가상 가로래 디제라 가사 주마다고 시아바세야 돼. 당아주 도와주세요. 주마다고 세대. 주마다고 시아바테라. 주마다고 시아바테라. 다 가산 도시 임바. 등을 저기 londe 마 친찬이. 니와 주마다비 따보라 니여비 주마다고 니여바 대다수비 주마다비 텐이 텐담대바 주마다고 손바 여점도 주장 내가 키발라 제와. 越讲让心去出去把来钱哇，我听到这么多我说的，听到的中国的，告诉我的，你想哪个都有多年的，但听到去把人家的，对吧？去把了，但东西都拿我这么多不对了，东西都拿我这么多问题，你以为那在等到第这么多我说的东西都让心去出去，东西都样当那样。 아니 나와 주마다고 라신을 주바 나와디 디치마디 인스체 그러봐 디치마디 인스체 같대체 저 아까 가상 아니 되어도 돼 타마 주바 좋아디
So then after you've gone through these four key points with respect to the self or the I and its relationship to the aggregates, establishing that the self and the aggregates cannot be, one eliminates the possibility that the self and the aggregates are intrinsically identical, are absolutely identical, and one likewise eliminates the possibility that the self and the aggregates are absolutely different, absolutely other than each other. Once one's done that, then one applies the same sort of reasoning, or rather, once one has done that kind of process of negating those two options of the relationship between the self and the aggregates, then one can easily see that the mind, which is a sort of dependent upon the I, is also necessarily neither unitary nor plural in that way. And so one gains that kind of understanding that the mind is also not established by means of its own intrinsic identity.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then once one's done that, then one applies that sort of process of negation is itself serves as establishing the object which one contemplates or meditates on when one is doing the meditation, which is the meditative concentration like space. Space-like meditative concentration, which is the mere negation of the intrinsic existence of the I or self. Then, once one's done that, it leads into establishing that the person has to be recognized or to appear as as being similar to a magical illusion. And then the way of explaining this way in which it is like a magical illusion, we've gone over the beginning of this section. We started on that yesterday. We went over the passage from the King of Meditative Concentration Sutra, and then the brief passage from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra as well. And then when these sutras explain that there's something is like a magical illusion, there's two forms of this, or two objects which are described as being like an illusion. The first of these is emptiness or ultimate reality, which is taught as being like a magical illusion. And in that context, the qualification of like a magical illusion means that although ultimate reality or emptiness is established as merely existing, it's negated as being something which is established as real, as we mentioned yesterday. And then the second form of this being like a magical illusion is applying to the appearance of the person in the as like a magical illusion, and other things as like magical illusions, which is that when here appearance that is like a magical illusion in this second sense is that something, although it is recognized, understood as being empty, it appears as if it was real, as if it was established as real. So the combination of these two things, the thing appearing as if it was real, as if it was established as real, and simultaneous with that recognition that the thing is empty, is the second form of this that we're discussing here. And then that led into a passage which was difficult to construe yesterday.
Oh yeah. But Dilani is a Donshin to Navi, now Jumatabun, Dilani. And it tenanda Tetongo Sabachuares, Terranawatang, Rasiji Truan, Nawatang. Now at Taji, Rasiji Tribute, but don't by me, and ye Sabachuare. They check. Ronga Radam, Mojamji Putter. Wrong rather put machine put now at the Matubanasi, now at the Matubanasi. Now at them to 10 mebatons, now at the 10 mebatons, now at the 10 mebachita. Now at Tarji 10, you bet on by the Michana, Rashi Truba, now at Tarji 10, you bet on what the Michana. Anita. Tenanda Tetongo Chapa Matuba is a younger the Google digging day on the draw. Misanas, under the Ishani. Ani now Jumata will tell on Micha. What is a gala? Damn about dancer. Now Rashi Truba Naya, now what does it turn? Rashi Yeba Tomba de Lola Machana, now don't use Matuba Yinzang. And now Jumata will tell on Micha. 또 젠다다 인사 다디 양세대 양대의 가유면도 담아도
So then this passage is that with respect to that, or with respect to this, that is this thing which, this appearance that is like a magical illusion, it has to have this combination of the two things, recognition that it is empty, and yet it's appearing as if it was real. These two in combination have to, both of these conditions have to be met for the thing to be for this appearance to be an appearance that is like a magical illusion in the sense that it's being described here. And so with respect to that, you have to have both the thing appearing in that way. Here, appearing in that way is appearing as if it existed by means of its own intrinsic nature, as if it has to appear as if it existed by means of its own intrinsic nature. And it also, one also has to recognize that it's empty of existing, existing as it appears. That is, one also has to recognize that it's empty of existing in that way that it appears as the appearance. It appears as if it was existing by means of its own intrinsic nature, but while one that appearance is appearing, one has to recognize, understand that it's actually empty of existing in that way that it appears. So you have to have both of those. Therefore, something like the horn of a rabbit or the son of a barren woman, they don't appear at all. They're totally non-existent, and therefore you can't really have an appearance of them, even a mere appearance of them. And then likewise, even if something appears to one, if one doesn't recognize it as being empty of existing as the object as which it appears, that is, if you one has to understand that the thing is appearing to one, but it's empty of existing as it appears, that is, as existing by means of its own intrinsic nature. Then if that recognition of the thing is not met, then it's not the case that one has recognized in one's mind the meaning of an appearance which is like a magical illusion. Again, the charna, charsawadi, charwadi, charsana.
Lola Chawa.
You go to New York, the chick Lola Sharwa dong, chick
Jarawa Dang Chak said and Mongba, Sharasan and Tatawa.
Nima Sharwa dong,
My Sharwa,
chicken over here.
Lola Chawas. That did this one. You can say,
Chick,
and the deed was now in Bach.
Chawas
Now what does you turn your bed on Lola Machana? Lola Machana. And Nando Nizo Goguwa Yenda, now you must have a total Chakamaris. Again, now Tenant Tetongo Soba to what you go ares. Again, Dila need Terra now at now that you tell, but on by Nizo you go ares.
The Chawadi Drimba W Europe. Drimba. Jesu Drimba.
Lola Chawa, Dumba Mari.
Drimba. Memory, recollection, tempa.
Lord Charles and a little Sharvala Chir, my own Badang and David Chabmat, Lola Chagris and Damon Chabarman, the Lola Showers, a little toba. Number the Sharvala cigar.
The shot. Almost. So I translate that as recognized. One maybe more accurately translate this as like sort of like dawning within the mind. Here. Literally, this term means to dawn, like the sun, the dawning of the sun, or we say the moon, the rising of the moon. the moon rises, the sun dawns, rises at dawn. So this has.
또 차를 세 나와라 자 초그래. 나와라 자 초그래.
So here one would more accurately translate this as this has to like arise or appear within the mind.
그래서 맞다. 야, 나 되나? 시와 되나? 규미 배단 자와 최선을 시와 최준이 다 규미 대신 다랑도 나양, 다랑도 마랑, 다랑도 매반 하신. 其他那个去县那么讲，让心去出版那样，让心去马主把写完去的送过来，是吧？我得送过来，但是得看这个是啥，俺你看说的，你为嫌我没那么当，就买那边大大浪不少，那样写的天津我那些，俺你们看说。 天津我呢嘛，这不落于南华怎么样？前年叫接受关上送了哪些啊？哪些前年是吧？你为俺你写问我呢？俺你没那么大，俺你我在进那边，俺你没写给那边，俺你没写给我了，俺你大浪都那样，是吧？我那样写天津我呢出发去，没有嘛的，是俺你落于南华怎么着？
So the example that given for this, that so something is appearing as if it existed by means of its own intrinsic nature, yet so it has that sort of appearance, it has this objective appearance as if it was established by means of its own intrinsic nature. Yet one knows that it is not established by means of that intrinsic nature. So the appearance of the thing as established by means of its own intrinsic nature has to be known, or has to here the problem is there's multiple words which mean something like appear. So finding a different term to distinguish these is a problem. So it has to sort of arise within one's mind such that one knows or recognizes perhaps that it is not established by means of its own intrinsic nature. The examples that are given for this are discussed here, that all phenomena should be understood as being like magical illusions. There's other examples that are used as well. So the Gyawa, His Holiness Sixth Dalai Lama, had a verse which said that it's just like someone whose mind has been affected by sleep, and they're dreaming various things, various objects, things appear in their dream. Or someone who is observing an illusion, a magical illusion, and doesn't, and the illusion appears as if it was a real thing, real horse and elephant and so forth, as a result of the power of the mantra and the special substances that are used in producing the illusion. And then milam gyuma.
Milam ni xian wo milam dang. Gyume la be da dang lang bo so. Ra gyuma ge de xing la. Na yang xi de tun jun wan ne xi chu wa xi. Mi ya ma de lo yin na wa zhe me de.
So these objects that appear in the mind, they appear within the perspective of the person who's sleeping, or the person who is affected by the illusionist's activity, such that these things appear in the mind as if they're actual or real objects. Yet they don't exist at all as real objects. Rather, they're simply the appearances to that cognition or that awareness.
No, yeah. What did you think that said you got that? Ben Juma can you do Juma te? 달랑기 때문에 동장 다달랑보기 주마대 달랑기 때문에 동장 달랑도 나와 예민이와 차라 대신도 와 대배라고 와 오야 되니 가서 다디 지지와데 텐티 지디라 대신 다시 관대 최고양 와 아니 다도 뭐서 대신 다시 관대 최고양 아니 상원에 주가 매봐 안 거기 타냐게 나와 점래 세야지 다디 송고하디 가사라 소비 최남 다센세가 다당 안에 가사 현당 다 대신 다시扩大양대소 최근 민당 로이 타냐지 나와 점래 가서 다시 남인 다시 원에 주가 가야 매 세지가나 대신도 최근 다당 현扩大양대라 소와 아니 로이 나와 점마도 어라왕 그 주가 가야 매 소에디야 가사라 소비 최남장 유대네 주변 라신지 때문에 동장 아니 라신지 주가 나와라 예민이가 세워고.
So then, this a way of explaining here in the text, it says, thus, just like the example of the magical illusion, one should understand all other phenomena. This refers to external phenomena, the external world, the internal phenomena of the oneself as the person, or the I as oneself, or other people as well, other beings. The way in which one does that is by means of the example of the magical illusion here. And as we mentioned previously, that it's the illusionist emanates the magical illusion using the having the object like the sticks and a stick or a stone or something, and then substance is applied to that. The spell is cast over that, and the magical illusion appears. And that magical illusion, which has been emanated in that way, is primordially empty of being a actual horse or an elephant. Nevertheless, it's unquestionable that it appears as a horse and an elephant. That sort of appearance occurs in that way, and then it can be recognized as such too, or it can dawn on one that this thing, this appearance, which appears exactly like it appears exactly as a horse or an elephant, is in fact not a real, actual horse or elephant. So here, in explaining that, it says too that. That here one takes this example and applies it to the way in which internal and external things normally appear to us. They normally appear, or they typically appear as if they were objectively established. They existed objectively by means of their own intrinsic identity, or they had their own intrinsic nature, which enables them to appear to us from their side objectively. But when we critically investigate them and examine them, we find that the thing as it appears to us doesn't exist within its basis of designation. That is, this appearance of the thing appearing as real, as objectively existent or intrinsically existent, existing by means of its own intrinsic identity. That sort of appearance isn't established within its basis of designation in any way whatsoever. And the absence of that thing existing as it appears within its basis of designation is primordially the case. It's always been the case, always will be the case, that that sort of appearance doesn't exist objectively as it appears. And rather, it's merely something that appears within the perspective of a person who is viewing the thing in that way.
Oh, yeah. Number show, 최근 민당 로이 탄예지 나 담래 다시 남제지 아니 다시 된 남제된 랑구야 봐 가야 마치서 최 탐제 민당 로이 탄예지 아니 나와 담래 아니 다시 남지 다시 khoran 거 안에 여바지 가야 요 말이.
So these things, then, internal and external things, don't exist as they appear, in the sense that they're findable within their basis of designation. That is, from the base of designation, it's not the case that the thing arises, sort of appears from the basis of designation as in the way that it appears. Rather, this appearance is like dakshingune.
dakshingune chubaji tawane yo ma dakshingune chubaji
nangwa
nangwa zamado minda lo tanyeji nangwa zamado dakshinamji tinne a rango ngoyo chubaji kanya yo ma re.
So the thing appears, it's a mere appearance of a convention that appears to our awareness. That is, the convention of the thing appears to our awareness, and yet that is not established objectively within the basis of designation in any way whatsoever. It's rather this mere appearance of the convention by which we designate the thing, which appears to the mind, to our minds.
Oh yeah, you can't you are maris. Tedan naya mari niduki bavi sosoki choru Kana sosungo kana shidere ani arangane chuba nawaje ani tar sosala la den hakugre sen ra tedan nayang sarang신지 tomba rede mari bi niduki bavi ni tuboki bavi ni tuboki leba 아니 소소지 초종 안에 강랑 아니 시대 안에 덴바 주와지 나와데 아니 라랑게 로라고 때나 하고 그래 숨바데
라 소소키 오기
초주 남시 초주 남시
So though it's primordially empty, all these things are primordially empty of existing in this objective way that they appear to us, ordinary beings. That's that the condition of them is primordial to them. Nevertheless, to ordinary sentient beings who are whose minds are clouded, are stained by the sleep of ignorance. For such ordinary sentient beings whose minds are clouded or affected or polluted, you could say their minds are in a sense polluted by the sleep of ignorance, the things nevertheless appear as if they were established as real to the 6 types of awareness that ordinary sentient beings have: the mental or intellectual awareness, and then the other 5 sensory awarenesses. Things appear that way to ordinary sentient beings who are clouded by the sleep of ignorance.
마르니디 바베 소소기 위초로 가나 시대 덴바 추바시 나와라리 롱안딜라 때 제송하다 대와께서 어디 다 대다르 하다 밀라 소와 나와니 가사다 수달라 소와긴 나위 되니 최수 줘봐 가사다 전화랑 그 천이 유튜브에 라신 두점 매장 레소바보다 따와다 양바 자와라 소베 딴데 탐제 태도 야
So, therefore, then Gyewa Kelsang Gyatso, the sixth Dalai Lama, said that one should view everything that appears like that, in that way. That although it's primordially empty of having the kind of objective status that things appear as having, nevertheless, they appear in that way. One should understand everything as having that nature. And then thus, the text continues here, thus, when humans and gods and humans, etc., appear, persons appear as gods and humans and so forth, and visible forms, sounds, etc., objects which appear as visible forms and sounds and so forth are posited as phenomena, and in that way, persons and phenomena don't have even although they don't have even a single atom of a nature which is established by means of its own intrinsic identity. So that's the first part of this statement. They don't, inner and outer things, persons and other phenomena, the objects that are perceived by persons, don't have even a single, don't possess even a single atom of a nature which is established by means of its own intrinsic identity.
Oh yeah, 자체 탐제 태비 7일 와 덴데지 자체 탐제 태도 자체 탐제 태비 7일 라신지 동양 아니 때는 밤에 줘봐 채동미라 자체 탐제 태비 7 채동만이라 최 탐제 예네 너만에 동바라 아니 최남 예 너만에 라신지 규베테다 동바라 동바 시와 좀 인배 아니 려제 그 세위 동바야 말이 예제위 동바야 말이 세제 탐제 대다 탐 세제 탐제 대단 뇌배 라신지 동바다 자체 태바 뇌배 예제위 동바야 많이 민배 개권배 인진증의 타다기 년부터
So, therefore, although persons and things that appear as external objects, like visible forms, sounds, and so forth, although they don't possess even a single atom of some kind of nature which is established by means of its own intrinsic identity, nevertheless, it's completely acceptable or demonstrable that they are able to operate as they're all able to function as the agents that create karma, that create and accumulate karma, and the persons being the creators of karma, and then they're also able to, and then external objects or objects such as things that are visible, things that sounds which are to be heard, also are able to operate. Entirely able to operate within dependently originated relationships, and since all of these things are since So since all of this functionality, the relationship between agents and actions, and agents and objects of actions, are demonstrable. That is, they can be established. Therefore, it's not a nihilistic. This emptiness that's being discussed is not a nihilistic kind of void, which precludes such things being demonstrable, cause and effect, agents and actions, and so forth. And since phenomena are empty in that way, primordially, absolutely primordially, all phenomena are empty in that way, not having even an atom, particle of a nature which is established by means of its own intrinsic identity, then because that's the case, this sort of emptiness which is stated here is not a kind of emptiness which is mentally fabricated by simply being something that is things simply being known as being empty. It's that sort of mentally fabricated emptiness is also not what is being discussed here. And since all objects of knowledge are accepted as being empty in the way that's stated above, therefore, this also isn't some kind of limited or one could say parochial kind of emptiness which has a limited range. And since that's the case, then by meditating on that or conditioning oneself, by having conditioned oneself to that form of emptiness, that emptiness functions as the antidote for all forms of adherence to which are grasping, misapprehending things as being real. The Denzengi Ngunshin Taraki Nyamburian. Denzengi.
Deshe Tataki Nyambutros. Denzengi Ngunshin Tataki Nyambutros. That's a mutant, that's Samutombani, Gaja, and a castle, Rashin Chuakapi. That are true Lola Nawai, I did then tribute the Gaja Tramo Yembe, Loyong. Sama maba koba shindu che chani ani jaw kasa so na shi chani ta rashi yutsubi ngade ana sama maba kapa gi ani rashi ji tombe tomba te ani sami 20 che sami 20 lo kang ge yudu mirunga mare sere ka lo kang ge yudu mirunga mare suire sana mirunga meji yanda be tawa den la papa tang yanda be tawa sama tomba ni 20 den la papa tang 양다비 태용 권비 권바 권배 유디 천리배 태용 권비 유디 천리배 아 남디스 냠스 레 미니바당 아니 남디스 냠스 레 미니바당 르주당 예미메메 된데 마인바 르주당 또주 지야 마인바 그안 동바지 말이
겨우 가성기
순디고
디
리주
마소 겨우 가성기 아주기 순
겨우 가성순디 대다 추유로라 나와이 가서 되네 트비들루디 가서 랑원에 트비들루디 가자 참모임바 가자 참모디 디레 스타 동바니 가자를 못해
디 칼리칼
대다 추유로라 나와이 가서 되네 트비들루디 랑 가서 랑 가서 들루중원에 추바 랑원에 추바 추비 들루데 다들 가자 참모들이 동반이 가자 참모들이 어고서 그랬어
롤로두
대다 추일러 나와이
롤로 나와이
아랑돌라 나와기 가서 되네 추바 랑신지 추바 나와기 들루데
ngaso
ngaranzo 되네 nga dewan chuba nga so nga kansa pungbo rasin chuba nga so 되네 chubi deludi da gaja chamo yimbe loyungor sama meba goba sintu che maluba de goba de sintu che ore
건다 두바데 두베
가자 참모 임베 로용어 하마 매바 말류바데 고바디 아니 다 캐치버리.
So this error that we entertain, this mistaken notion that appears to our minds that things exist as if they were things existing as if they were established as real. This kind of error, mistake that appears in our mind is the subtle form of the object of negation, the thing which we're supposed to eliminate completely. So this sort of erroneous conception or erroneous cognition, which appears within our minds for us, is this subtle form of the object of negation, and this is the object of negation which one is supposed to completely eliminate entirely. So that's explaining what this the profound meaning here is referring to the understanding of the that arises from the negation of that object of negation, that the error, the erroneous way in which one has viewed things as existing as real is incorrect. Did you have that verse? Did you get that verse? No, there's something at the beginning that I didn't get.
가자 참모래 사모동만이 가자 참모래 봐 가자 참모 임바 로용어 하마 말려바데 고고래 고바데 신디 제와래.
So this erroneous kind of apprehension of things, this appearance to our minds of things existing in a way in which they don't, this which is erroneous, is mistaken. That has existed within us beginninglessly. That kind of erroneous appearance of things in a way which is erroneous. That has existed within our minds. This appearance of things in an erroneous fashion, again, is their appearance as being established as real, existing in a way in which they don't actually exist. That sort of erroneous appearance has occurred within us beginninglessly, primordially, existed within us. And that subtle object of negation is what is to be eliminated completely. And then, so that's, once one has done that, then one has understood correctly the profound meaning here. So the profound meaning, profound meaning here is in reference to the emptiness, which was discussed earlier. The things not existing, having even an atom of intrinsic existence established by means of its own intrinsic identity. That that sort of profound, here the term could be translated as profound object, or alternatively one could translate it as the meaning of the profound. The grammar here you could construe either way. That is not something that is suitable to be an object for just any kind of awareness, any kind of cognition. Rather, it has to be, it only occurs for someone who has established it by means of the correct view. Correct view establishes that profound object, emptiness. And by means of cultivating meditation upon this authentic object, here again, emptiness, by cultivating, developing one's meditation or conditioning oneself to that, the meaning of this thing that is authentic or actual, it's able to become is able to become an object in that way for one, and therefore, because it's the case that this is and here it says, because that's the case, this object, this profound object emptiness, is not something which one cannot practice at the time of the path, and it's also the case that it's not something which is not knowable, which is unknowable. Here, this is referring to the thing being indeterminate as to whether or not it exists or does not exist. And it's also not a kind of emptiness which is completely unable to be realized, something that one cannot realize in any way whatsoever.
Bidi buwa ye, dokwen nanda jen la,